What is up, and I welcome each and every one of you back to a brand new Civ. Oh, no, I mean Humankind. We're going to give my first thoughts on the Humankind game after playing for a couple of hours and really finishing a campaign all by myself on the absolutely impossible Metropolis difficulty. For those of you who don't know, it's pretty much Prince difficulty in Civ 6. But yeah, I do have a list of thoughts I'm going to share right now. It really is a list and bullet points, more or less, than like a specific script. So do bear with me if I do take a while to make some things understood, I guess, but these are really my first thoughts on the new Humankind game that just released yesterday. Let's start with the number one and most obvious comparative to Civ. Now, the way I want to really review Humankind, and there'll be more in my reviews to come in the future after I really get a handle on this game, this is going to be compared to Civ, right? Let's be honest. I'm not saying it's better or worse than Civ, but it's going to be compared to Civ 6 because Civ 6 is really one of the only 4X strategy games, but Humankind is also sort of just trying to break the monopoly of Civ 6, I guess. And I said in my first review back after the Victor open beta that it really needed to just come out and dominate. It couldn't come out like base game Civ 5 or base game Civ 6, where it was really bare bones and felt a little lackluster. It really had to make a boom with multiple different mechanics present, or it would have no chance against the established Civilization series. And honestly, I think it definitely did that. I really do think so. The games I've played so far have been lower difficulty, so I have snowballed really easily, but I think all the mechanics they have, the religion, the way they handle that, the way they handle influence, stability, the way that they prevent you from using infinite city spam, which I will get to in the future, is absolutely amazing in my opinion. But let's start with the first real point I'm going to make, the combat system. Now, the combat system is, like I said in my review, absolutely amazing. The combat system is just an incredible thing in my opinion because it doesn't take into account, all units can't really join the fight. It's not as if, you're Civ 6 where you have 3 archers and a warrior and you're literally unstoppable until they get man-at-arms or something. You get army, right? You can get, like, for example, the Roman culture will give you an extra slot in the army, but you pretty much make a military. And until you get organized warfare, everyone in that sort of army group you have is going to fight against other people. You can't join battles in the middle of battles without organized warfare, making it one of the most important technologies in the entire game. But I love how strategic it is, how you have to pick your battles, make sure you get the high ground, make sure you fight in strategic positions, and also you could have sort of like a pass where you could hold off more units with your less units, if that makes any sense, right? Maybe a mountain pass, or maybe you secure the hills and defend on rivers, whereas the enemy will not. And that kind of strategy really does bring sort of the strategy back in the 4X game genre. In Civ 6, you beeline. I just had a Civ 6 golf video where I just beeline man-at-arms and completely destroyed everybody. This game definitely requires you to use your mind a little bit more in combat than in Civ 6, and I absolutely love the combat system. They sort of took Civ 4's, stack of doom that they used to have, where you just stack units in like one stack and go off. And instead had a limit towards that. You can increase the limit, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be anything too game-breaking. And with organized warfare, you could bring in reinforcements, and late game it gets so much better. You can bombard with planes and artilleries. Heck, naval units can even join the fight. But the combat system, in my opinion, is probably the best thing in Humankind by far, and it blows Civ 6 out of the water. Next up, we're going to get to the infinite city spam. The biggest thing, the biggest, I guess, prevention, biggest problem in a 4X strategy game like Civ 6 is infinite city spam. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're new to the 4X genre. If you get 20 cities and the enemy AI on deity has 10 cities, you will win every single time. The amount of cities, they sort of tried to fix that in Civ 5 by implementing the happiness mechanic and all the penalties you get through that, but they removed it in Civ 6 because it was kind of boring, honestly, optimizing just 4 or 5 cities. But in Civ 6, they removed that and everything. It was just all gung-ho domination until about Rise and Fall, where they introduced the loyalty mechanic. Humankind does this differently, completely differently, and it's a way I like. They handle the infinite city spam sort of like Old World, where they have specific regions, and you can only settle one city per region. So what that means is, if you have enough influence, you can spam out a butt ton of outposts, but it's going to require a lot, increasing amount of influence to get cities and to attach outposts into actual cities you already have. And so it sort of breaks the infinite city spam problem, because if you're going to go for an infinite city spam, you're going to need an immense amount of culture. You're going to have to go for an influence culture in the ancient and probably classical era. You're going to have to go that for your religious tenant beliefs. And if you do that, it prevents you from going towards science, gold, military. You can't focus on just infinite city spam like you could do in a Civ game, for example. And the fact that each region is different, and you can only have one city per region, and regions have different resources, strategic resources are super, super duper rare in this game. So you do have to really plan out exactly where you're going to put your cities, which ones are going to be outposts, and you can't exactly just spam out like 500 different settlers and tell them to go. And that is something I also really, really like about this game. Now, after that, we're going to talk about another thing I really, really like about this game. It is going to be the Neolithic Era. The Neolithic Era is extremely fun to play. You're really just one tribe walking around trying to get food, fighting other animals, and it's kind of difficult because you could theoretically die. You know, if you're like, a noob mistake is to go after the mammoths with just like one hunter-gatherer party. You could do that if you're on like a hill and the mammoth is on like a river tile. You could potentially win, but the mammoth is probably going to move on to better terrain, which definitely, the AI is a lot better than Civ 6 in the base game. It's going to move on to different terrain, and it's just, you could die easily, but the fact that you could go around, and again, it's kind of give or take again, because if you want the Neolithic Era's era bonus, I guess it's called, you're going to have to wait until you get 10 science, it's 10 science essentially, from the science encampments, and that is really damn hard, and it's going to take you a while, and sometimes it might be better to just settle a city and just get started on your culture immediately after growing to enough population or killing enough units. And I like the way the Neolithic Era is handled. There are some hostile monsters, there are some not hostile monsters, and you could go ahead, raid different encampments, raid enemy civs. Honestly, you're not really going to be able to engage in diplomacy until you both actually have a culture, which is something I find really interesting. But the Neolithic Era is definitely super well handled, and I love the fact that you can just you can't take everything, if that makes any sense. Like in Civ, if you go take out like 3 different enemy civs, you can win in domination, culture, heck, even diplomatic if you do things right, a lot easier than normal. But here now, you can't go for you can't go for immediate growth, as well as getting the Neolithic Era bonus, which could be super powerful later on in the game. And so it sort of just depends on a game-by-game basis. If you're not getting enough science, you're just better off just settling the outpost, going to the next era, and getting your first ancient era culture. And you might want to get that, especially if you want somebody broken like the Harappans or something, because they do seem to go super duper fast, the Harappans, in the Neolithic Era by the enemy AI. So that is just my thought on the Neolithic Era. I do think it's a really fun mechanic, and yeah, let's actually move ahead to the other thing I want to talk about. The diplomacy is more advanced. The diplomacy is most definitely more advanced in Humankind than it is in Civ. You can go ahead and you have to like open to trade luxuries, open to trade strategic resources, and in order to do that, you have to have open trade routes. Trade routes actually can make trading posts by themselves, which is really a cool mechanic. It was there in the Victor Open Beta. I think it might still be here. I haven't really paid attention, but I do like the fact that the diplomacy is more advanced. In order to get an alliance, you are going to actually have to go through some things, not aggression pact. I could go for a not aggression pact. And the other thing about diplomacy is you could fight enemy units without specifically declaring a war. You could pillage enemy outposts. The only thing you'd really want a war for is to go ahead and take enemy outposts or take enemy cities or make them your vassal, which I find really cool, that you could just go ahead and go through border skirmishes, which is really fun in my opinion. And yeah, the diplomacy is definitely a lot better. Not really too much to talk about it, but yeah, let's move on to the next thing. Let's move on to the negatives right now. There are a couple of negatives, and I think the biggest negative right now, in my opinion, is that the snowball is still immensely overpowered. I am obviously still playing on like the Prince King type of difficulty, converted to Civ Metropolis difficulty, around that, so I don't know how it is on the super high difficulties. But I feel like if you take out an enemy civ, take out some cities, make them your vassal, do it to another civ, you could snowball the game absolutely immensely. And I feel like that is going to be a problem in the future. If it's just going to be, just build a big army, go to war, and win the game that way, I feel like that does have to be fixed. Now, obviously, I still haven't played the higher difficulty, so I don't know if it is still a problem. But theoretically, if you do take out an enemy nation early on and are able to make them your vassal after 2 or 3 wars, you should get a lot lot more bonuses. That's true. And they did fix the gold mechanic that haunted them in the Victor open beta. When you get a vassal, you got like thousands of gold per turn, which is insane. But yeah, the Snowball is still immensely OP. I feel like it's just a little too OP in my opinion. I feel like the city cap preventing you from settling more cities than you can it's not hard enough. If you're one city over the cap, you're going to be getting like a -10 influence bonus, which is almost nothing. If you're 2 or 3 cities, then it starts getting a lot, but I wish it scaled better. I feel like if you're one city over the cap, you should get at least a 30 to 40 influence like deterioration. That would help stop the Snowball a lot, although there would also be different problems, like maybe that would prevent early war games entirely. But yeah, early war Snowball is definitely something that needs to be looked at in my opinion. And let's actually go ahead now into the naval game. That's another kind of, not gripe really, but that is something. The naval game is fine. Right? The naval scene is kind of fine. I have encountered some bugs. I don't know if it's just me. They did release a patch this morning where, you know, if you're playing it, if you're like, you can't surround a city with boats, which is kind of weird. Like, you can't, like, invade or anything like that, which is kind of weird. Naval battles are fine. It's exactly what you would expect. I feel like it does get overshadowed by the land military mechanic, honestly. But naval battles are okay. They're fine. It's not really great. More of a, they do it better than Civ did in their base game, which is something you're going to be able to say a lot of about Humankind. Now, that is going to be pretty much it for my first thoughts. Again, this isn't some sort of complete review you would find on IGN. This is just my thoughts after a couple games. I will come out with a more in-depth review in the future. But yeah, if you have enjoyed, as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I am going to be making a lot more Humankind in the future. I definitely do love this game. But yeah, without further ado, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace. Huge shout out to my members, Cash Christian, Ben Omby, John Blair, Jackson Perez, Polaris Gaming, Emporium, Adam Mester, Jeff Utzler, Kim Cosmos. A really special shout out to my Oh My God subscribers, Robert and Overflow of Amenities.